Hi everyone. So first of all, I started off with a leftover set of boards from another miniature kit. This one was it was going to be, when I bought it, it was like a kit to make like a library. But I used all that for Tumbledown Cottage and I had the room left over, so I decided to use it for this. You could just get 3 pieces of board and make it this way. I just use what I've already got. Saves me making some boards. But normally what I'd do, if not, I'd just get 3 pieces of very thin board like this, like I think this is MDF, or you know, some of the stuff you can get from craft stores, or just use foam board and cut 3 rectangles out the same size. Put one at the back, one at the bottom, one at the other side, and trim off any excess. But I decided to use what I've already got. Now you have to excuse the lighting. I did struggle with the lighting on this first little bit, because obviously the window's behind me. I was contemplating sticking that piece on which came with the original model, but I did decide against it in the end. Then I had to think about how I wanted to do the floor. I had to think, well, is this going to be like a derelict kitchen, a derelict living room, or a derelict bedroom? And I decided in the end to go for carpet. So obviously this is like a derelict living room or a bedroom. I haven't decided which yet. I'm leaning more towards probably like a derelict bedroom, but I haven't 100% decided. And to make the bedroom, what I did was first of all I needed to texture the walls, because I wanted the walls to look like old crumbling plaster that's all like really manky, and I didn't want to do wallpaper. I knew I didn't want to do wallpaper. So what I did was I put some PVA glue on the board. You need to put plenty on, just whack it on. And then I took some 3-ply tissue and separated it into the separate layers, the separate plies, and just applied a thin layer at a time. Now for this wall I did do it in strips, but then for the other wall I did it in one big piece and it worked out exactly the same. So it doesn't matter how you cut up the tissue or apply it, as long as it's one layer at a time. And what you do is you put a layer of tissue down and then you paint another layer of PVA glue over the top. And little tip, if you want to save the brush to use it again, as soon as you've finished using it for this, put it straight in water, because PVA glue dissolves in water, and give it a good swish around and leave it to soak in water, and it'll stop it setting rock hard on the bristles. So I applied layers of tissue, like literally one thin layer at a time, applied another layer of glue over the top, and I brushed the glue on top quite messily, and I wasn't worried about keeping it all perfectly flat and neat. You want it to get that wrinkly bumpy texture, because if it goes on smooth, it's not going to create the same effect. You could use polyfiller, that's, you know, crack filler stuff, and cover the walls in that to give it more of a texture. I just decided to use the tissue paper and glue because it's cheaper than the polyfiller stuff. I did use some crack filler later on for some of it, but I'll show you that later. So I just kept applying the layers of tissue and making sure I covered all of the wall, because the more texture you can add, the better. And what you can do as well to speed up the drying process is use a hairdryer or a heat gun. I've got like a crafting heat gun that's like a low heat one. I've got a high heat one and a low heat. Use a low heat heat gun for this, because you don't want to like burn anything. But use that to dry off the glue and tissue mix, and it helps speed it up, ready for the next step, which is to apply the next layer and then obviously to paint and everything. And then just trim off any excess that's over the edges. And then once I did the walls, then it was time to make the carpet. And to make the carpet, I had this fabric. It was some fabric I got from the craft store. Is it Hessian or... I can't remember. I'm useless with names of fabrics. But anyway, it's this one that looks like a brownie fabric. And it frays really well, which is why I like using it. So I cut out the size that I needed for the piece of carpet I wanted to create. And then using my scissors, I just scraped all around the edges of the fabric, which causes it to fray quite badly. But that's what I wanted. I wanted the carpet to be very decayed and fraying, and, you know, it's an old carpet that's really breaking down. So just scraping along the edges and then just trimming off the excess fibres really just makes the edges look tatty. And then I wanted to create a hole in the carpet in the back corner, because that's where I'm imagining the roof's leaked. So all you do is you cut out the hole to the size you want and then scrape all the way around the edges, and it creates that frayed hole look instead of it looking like it's been cut with scissors. I probably could have done with making that area a bit bigger, to be fair, but I decided to stick with small. And then I tweaked the shape of the front of the carpet and also scraped it with the scissors to create the frays. And I stuck the carpet down and put some little strips of wood underneath to look like rotting floorboards. And then on the walls, I cut out little rectangles of very thin balsa wood to create bricks in the places where I'd created it, the plaster peeling off. And then I used some filler that you normally use to fill cracks in the wall. And I use that to create the mortar for the bricks. So as you can see, there's the bricks, and then all I've done is I've ripped the tissue paper mixture that's around it to make it look like the plaster's falling off the wall. And then I use this filler as mortar for the bricks. And at this stage it kind of looks like it's took the texture away of the brickwork, but what I do is I just scrape with card to scrape off the excess filler, and that shows the bricks back through. And as you can see, there's the little rectangles of wood, and I'm just using the filler to fill in any gaps so it looks like it was a properly built wall underneath at one point. And using the cardboard just scrapes off the top layer to make sure you can still see the bricks, and also it makes sure that it's nice, like a nice even layer. And I did this on all the areas where I created bare brickwork, and all I did to create those areas of bare brickwork is just, as the tissue paper and glue mix was drying, I just scraped at it with my craft knife into the shape of the peels and breaks that I wanted. I didn't create massive areas of exposed brick because, to be honest, I've run out of the thin balsa wood that I was using to make bricks, so I didn't have enough bricks. Otherwise, what I could have done is maybe have a larger area of exposed brick, but for this one I just decided just to have small areas because that's all I could make the bricks for. What I'll do is, at some point when I've got access to more materials, I'll do another room like this. But I'll have it where there's more brickwork and basically there's just patches of plaster left. But that's an idea for another time. So here I'm just scraping off any excess plaster off the little bricks that I made. And I'm also scraping into the wood to create a bit of texture, because the wood was fairly smooth and obviously bricks aren't perfectly smooth, especially old bricks. So I'm just scraping away and creating textures just to add to the brickwork effect later on, and then peeling up any edges that I've accidentally stuck down of the peeling plaster work that's supposed to stick up. And I just went around all the little areas of brickwork that I created and did that. I found it exposed more of the little bricks, and also just added that little bit of texture to them, ready for when I paint it later on. And there you can see the little floorboards that I put under the carpet, and I stuck them under really igglety-pigglety. I didn't make the floorboards nice and neat or anything like I did for the art studio build, because obviously I want this to look like it's, you know, a really derelict building. The hole in the carpet, I stuck a couple of broken bits of floorboard in there. I want that to look like it's a hole that's started, where the roof's leaked and the water's dripped down over time, and as well as creating mould and the mess in the room, it's causing the floorboards to collapse. And then after I dried everything with the heat gun, it was time to paint. Now this looks different colour on camera, but in real life, this is burnt umber mixed with a little bit of black. For some reason, the black's picking up on camera more than the burnt umber. But what I've done is mixed a lot more brown, and it's just literally a dot of black. And I watered it down as much as possible. In some areas, I've got the paint a bit thicker than others, but I didn't want it to be even. And I found one nice little trick for painting the walls is get your paint water and just go over the walls just to make sure the walls are wet, and then get some of your mixture of burnt umber and black very watered down onto the brush, and then literally just touch the brush to the wall, and the colour from your brush will just run down the wall, and it'll ooze in its own little patterns and things, and it looks like it's been, like, you know, dripping water. So it just creates a really nice effect. So I do really like that effect and how it worked out. The area around the exposed brick by the little paint cup came out a bit darker than I wanted, but I've never done this before, so it was one of them where, like, I started off, could see how it was kind of working, and then realised how to, like, make it work better. So it's a learning curve. And then it's just a case of going around where the exposed bricks are. I just want to make sure that the areas around the exposed brick areas are completely painted. You don't want any white left, ideally. You can have, like, little bits, but you don't want too much, because otherwise it just looks like you've not painted a big chunk of it. But again, you don't want it to be like a perfect layer either. So you can see it creates like a mottled effect. And all I'm using is different mixtures of the colour. So I've got burnt umber mixed with a little bit of black, literally just a dot of black in it. And then it's just watered down to varying degrees to create the different shades. And that's how I created the different colours on the wall. And also I used the same very liquidy watered down mixture for the carpets as well. And it was just a case of keep applying that until I was happy with the effect. And dripping some more in some areas, more in others. The area where the hole is in the carpet, I put more of the mixture, because I want that to look really like it's really going mouldy, and it's covered in black mould, and it's all manky and it's rotting, because that's why the hole's in the floor, because it's been wet that long, it's rotted through. And then once I was pleased with the little drips and things that I created and with the colour of the walls, then it was time to dry it off with the heat gun again. This is just one I got from the local craft supply store. I normally use this if I'm using, what do you call it? Is it embossing powder? If you make cards and stuff, and you use this to melt the embossing powder so it looks like it's foiled on the card. But I find this is very useful because of its small size. It's very useful for little projects like this to dry everything between the layers. Because I'm quite impatient and I don't like leaving stuff overnight to dry if I can carry on doing the same project during the day. When I make stuff like this, I try and get as much done in a day or two as possible, just because I enjoy doing it. And doing a little bit and then leaving it overnight, I find that really frustrating, because I just want to do my project. So I used my heat gun, dried it off a bit, and then applied a bit more paint where I felt it was needed. And yeah, it's just layers after that. A bit more here and there, and then dry it off a bit, apply a bit more paint here and there, dry it off a bit, and that's basically the whole process I went through. For this part, most of what I'm doing is applying the dark brown to the floorboards, because I realised halfway through I forgot to paint them. And then I'm just touching up any bits where the original wood colour's showing through, because obviously I want everything to look dull and dingy. I don't want anything to have like a brand new look to it at all. To paint the brickwork, I used a mixture of burnt umber and I think it was cadmium red, if I remember right, and just it's 2 parts brown to 1 part red, in case anyone's wondering on the quantities. And I watered that down a little bit and just applied a couple of layers to the bricks, and then the mortar in between looked really white once I painted the bricks, because obviously it's just the bare filler stuff. So I got my really watered down burnt umber and went over the mortar to dull it down a bit and make it look dingy. And I did that for all the patches where the brickwork's showing. On camera you can't see some of the brickwork, but it is there. But I did fix it later on and peel back a bit of the tissue paper stuff so I could see more of the brickwork. Then I've got these little leftover fake plants from another miniature project and decided to add those in. The idea is that the roof's collapsed on this one, and in the areas where the roof's collapsed, weeds are growing, so that's why I wanted to put these little plants in. And then I also added as well as these little plants, I added some moss. And the way I did the moss is I've got a bag of like it's like fake foliagey grass type stuff. It's like it's almost like a little bits of crumbly sponge material that's green. I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called, but I just got it out of the model making section of my local art store. And what I did was use the hot glue gun and just put a very small amount of hot glue in an area in the shape of where I wanted the green to be. And then I only put a tiny bit of glue as well, don't put too much. And then I sprinkle the green on top and press it down with my finger just to stick the green in place. And I did that on both walls and a little couple of areas on the carpet. It just adds to that sort of mossy, decaying, you know, it's been retaken over by nature kind of look. And as you can see, I've stained the carpet as well quite a bit. So yep, this is step 1. This is how to create the basic room, and then it's up to you to decide what you put inside. I'll show you what I decide to put in this room in the next video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.